Okay, so it's October 10th, and it's long overdue for me to start my Halloween 2021 selections. Um, I have been reviewing some things on streaming that I will be talking about, things I've seen for the first time, because I'll be doing a bit of that as we get into October before I work my way up to like the classics and perennials for me every Halloween, some of which I reviewed last year, but I'm just going to review them again. So, but my debut title, the way things are timed, maybe it's the end of Mercury in retrograde, is a theatrical release. I just got back from the local AMC pavilion, and they were gracious enough to show this film. Charlotte has finally started showing interesting films in the last several years, uh, which, in the 90s and 2000s, they weren't too great in that area. And I was always petitioning people that I knew, but, a lot of it went on deaf ears, but some things did pan out. But that's a story for another time. So what I saw tonight, I saw a double feature today. Actually, the first film that I saw matinee of this afternoon, I will review in a upcoming video very soon. But I want to get some of the Halloween stuff out of the way. So I'm going to be filling Blue Review number 66 with this film called TITANE, a 2021 film directed by Julia Ducournau, I believe is how you will probably say her name. She directed Raw, and Raw was quite a good film, especially it kind of merged some of my cinematic interests like cannibalism with my real life interests like veganism. Um, I thought it was pretty cool, but it was not. Uh, it couldn't have prepared me for this film. This film won a prize at Cannes, and apparently a lot of people, or several people, walked out. Um, Often a good sign. Um, I haven't read a lot about all that. Now that I've seen the film and kind of can judge for myself, I'm going to do some research on it. All I have brought up here is my Letterboxd account, of which I've just added TITANE to my video diary. And it's going to help me with some of the cast names so that I can be on point here. It's really only two that really matter. And that's Vincent Lindon. He is a perennial French star, fine actor. I've admittedly only seen him in one previous film, La Moustache, so, recommended to me by my old friend John Allen. And I thought it was excellent, and especially thought he was excellent. The other star, really the star, is Agatha Roussel. Or Agatha Roussel. I'm not sure how you would say her name. I don't know anything about her at all except she's brilliant. She has created a compelling, indelible, unforgettable character called Alexia, and I'm just going to go through the film. These are just my, hot takes, as they say. My cat's back there trying to get a cameo in. He's going to have to come closer, though. The basic idea is that this little girl, Alexia, they show her as a child. She's driving, she's riding in the back seat with her father, who's driving, playing some, I don't know, country bluesish kind of stuff. The guitars were kind of cool, but the vocals were kind of redneckish. It was really weird because it's a French film, but maybe not weird. Anyway, I don't know about how popular music is in France. But it was getting on my nerves, so I'm sure it was getting on the daughter's nerves. But she seemed like a kind of malicious kid to begin with, a little beyond mischievous. She was kept humming really loud to the sound of the car going. So he kept turning up the music, and she kept getting louder. And he told her to stop it. He screamed at her, and so she started kicking his the back of his seat. He told her to stop, and so she unbuckled her belt, turned around like she was going to crawl out the back window, which she couldn't have. and he just reflexively grabbed her and said, you know, come back, put your belt on. And then they crashed into a big cinder block thing. And she like went through the window. So, I mean, they didn't show her like flying through the window. Anyway, so then we cut to the father looking kind of annoyed and bored. And I was, at that point, I was almost on board with the guy. Like, it was kind of her fault, you know. But anyway, they put a titanium steel plate in her head. And the mom's like, is it going to move? And the doctor said, no, it's solid. It's titanium. Only a violent shock, you know, would do it. So, for the record, I'm not sure if a violent shock is supposed to have happened sometime to kind of set off this chain of events that I guess her titanium plate really pushes her towards her destiny, so to speak. If it is, it's off camera, and I'm sure I don't think it's mentioned. So either that happened, or the titanium plate itself had some bizarre effect on her physiology. And bizarre is putting it mildly. This has been described as a body horror film. First half of the film, I wasn't sure about that, but then it definitely is. So anyway, we flash forward to, when she leaves the hospital, she's got her head shaven. She's had the plate put in, and she's already running around out, you know, beyond her parents' control, and hugs a car, I guess their car, hugs it really affectionately. One other thing I'd read about the film was that it's a woman who is in love with, or gets off on car fetishism. So I immediately thought of the movie Crash and book Crash by J.G. Ballard, filmed by David Cronenberg. Didn't know how big a point that was going to be. So it is and it isn't. It's kind of like a lot of really well done films these days, or maybe in general, but especially these days, where intelligent filmmakers are letting the audience kind of put the pieces together on their own. They're not like holding your hand and jamming exposition down your throat. They're showing, not telling, and they're allowing you to kind of hopefully put the pieces together yourself. Of course, David Lynch is brilliant at that, and as he was in Inland Empire, and especially in Twin Peaks: The Return, you kind of just knew what was happening, even if it was something very strange and esoteric and out of left field, because he's a great storyteller. He's a great storyteller in the sense of he knows how to tell a story, how to tell, conceive and execute a mystery, and kind of have it solve itself, because he's a very intuitive writer and director, and you know, obviously he's a surrealist, and that's kind of what the surrealists were doing, was tapping into the subconscious to find the answers to things, so, and inspiration. So this movie, I don't know if I would call it surreal, but I don't know what I would call it. Brilliant for sure. When we flash to the grown-up Alexia, she's still living with these kind of misanthropic dad, and still giving him evil looks, and her. A thought I had while she was in the car as a little girl was maybe that he had molested her, and that's why she had this rage toward him that ended up in their accident, and still kept the rage. Even when she's in the hospital, they're like, you know, she's staring at it all through him. And it carries over to when she's an adult. And later in the film, you learn she's now 32. So, but she's still living with the parents. And still obviously doesn't like them, especially the dad. And I guess he has no clue of what she does. Well, he has no clue of what she does with her time. She does have a job, and it's an unusual one. She's like a dancer. They describe her as a dancer later on, a 32-year-old dancer. Well, she's like an exotic dancer. She's not a stripper, but definitely an erotic dancer with the twerking and everything, the heavily erotic fetishization, but the fetishization is directed towards automobiles. Apparently, she's part of like this cadre of erotic dancers who deal in this underground milieu. Again, none of this is really explained in dialogue, it's just shown to you. And they have all these cars and they do erotic gyrations and sensual sexual dances and twerking madly to and on all over these vehicles in front of this starstruck crowd of Goombas. And apparently this has made her a small little celebrity of sorts because they all want her autograph after her show. And she's, like I said, she's still very angry around her parents. She's angry in this milieu too. I mean, she obviously is into the dancing part, but as soon as that's over, she's all business and it's over. I'm going home, much to the dismay of some of her infatuated male fans. She does start to bond with a fellow dancer, who at first she's kind of cold to, but then they bond in a moment where her hair accidentally gets tangled in the girl's nipple piercing. Uh, so, and I get, the humor of it kind of, breaks the ice with them. We'll get back to her later, that character and their interaction. But basically, she's going home, and she's, not in costume anymore. She's dressed down. She's just heading home, and one of these guys follows her to her car and pesters her, and she's a little more patient than I expected her to be. They're very blunt with him, and he gets an autograph, and then he starts telling her he's in love with her, and he's like, "I doubt you feel the same." And I'm like, "Really?" Um, and he reaches in and kisses her as she's trying to roll the window up. Kind of bold, so I thought, man, this guy's gonna get it. But then she starts passionately kissing him back, and I thought, hmm. Um, she keeps this little hair thing, whatever you call it, a little pointy stick that goes kind of into your bun up here. I know there's a name for it, I'm blanking on it, but hers is very sharp. So, this has been done in movies before, but she has her hair up in it a lot because she has the scarification and everything on her side of her head. This side of her head, I guess. It would be this side of her head. Am I getting that right? I'm not sure. I'm thinking of the poster. I guess, yes, it's this side. And so no hair grows right there, but it's like right above her ear. It's kind of like this pinwheel design. And so she kind of keeps her hair up, and I guess she's, confident in this mark that's been made on her by life. Um, so she keeps it up in a bun, and it's longish and blonde. And so while she's making out with the guy, she takes the thing out and stabs him in the ear all the way to the brain. And he aspirates, and all this nasty white milky fluid comes out of his mouth until he's dead. And then she kicks him, out of the car, back away from the car. And then apparently drags his body in to dispose of. So by this time, my thoughts are like, has she done this before? Why is she a murderer? Is she a murderer because of the titanium plate is driving her insane? Or, like I said, she's always been angry even before that? Is it because there was abuse by her father? All these questions. And some of them are answered, though not, linear ABC logic wise. But they are revealed, and then some of them are never answered. But the picture that starts to be painted is, she goes to her house, and the dad has a big garage, and she burns some clothes. I'm trying to think if that's a little bit later. But we assume probably she disposed of this guy's body. And then we see the news, and there's two sets of reports that the dad kind of starts listening to, and I'm trying to think, these obviously must be relevant for the audience. They're planting seeds of exposition here. One report is about this kid named Adrian, and he He looks kind of he's kind of a dark kid. I want to say kind of Middle Eastern looking, though really neither of his biological parents who later meet really look like that. I don't know. Anyway, um, but he's been missing, and they say they've done age progression on him to how he would look now. He's been missing for 10 years. So he was a small child, young boy, maybe 8, I don't know, I'm guessing. Uh, and they report that there's some other missing children. They also report that there's some other killings of men and women that have been going on in the area that are unsolved, and they're starting to believe it's the work of one person, a serial killer. So the dad has a disturbed look about this, and Alexia's just pretty nonchalant and eating her dinner, albeit on the sofa away from dad, who's made himself spaghetti. I know there's way too much detail here. Um, but suffice to say, uh, these reports obviously have kind of rung a bell in her head. Um, so the next thing she does is she meets up with the fellow dancer who she kind of bonded with, and they're making out, and the young lady wants her to go down on her, and instead of that, she kind of lingers on her nipples, biting them, and all that, and which is cool. But she starts getting too rough with pulling on the uh, metal piercing, which she yanked it, kind of as a you know joking little mean takeaway from their encounter in the dressing room, or maybe it's a shower um, earlier. Uh, so she bites too hard and ends up really hurting the girl. You can tell the girl's in pain, and then it's just too much, like she's about to rip it out with her teeth. And Alexia gets mad, and she has that kind of spoiled, mad, petulant look she's given us previously as a woman and as a young girl. And the girl chases after her, and uh, so yeah. So here's the key thing that I completely missed. I hate this when this happens. I get out of sequence. Um, Before she meets with the girl, she goes to the parents' garage, and she's just come out of the shower. She's totally naked. This actress is naked, completely naked through huge chunks of this movie. Um, and she gets into the car and lashes her wrists to the sides of the back seat, and is humping the back seat, and you don't really see what's happening down here, if she's humping something like a gear shift. But the car, they show a distant shot, and the car is going up and down insanely. How could it be possible? It would be going all the way up and down, and the lights are flashing, and it seems as she gets nearer to an orgasm, the headlights are getting brighter and brighter. And after she gets out of the car, and does all this, she feels a little weird. Um, so anyway, when she's with the girl, she kind of pulls away from her after the nipple problem, and she starts to feel kind of nauseous and um, I don't know, queasy, and it's kind of, you can tell she's in some kind of bizarre pain, uh, probably emanating from the genital abdominal and abdominal areas. But she goes back with the girl, and I guess spends the night because she's wearing the girl's tank top later, later that evening or early in the morning, and they start making out. Um, she's still a little sick, and the girl's like trying to comfort her. And she stabs the woman with her hairpin thing. Stabs her in the face, where it's kind of sticking out, and then takes it out and starts kind of choking her to death, and I guess sticks it in her ear too. And you see that part from the back. They're on the couch, so you just kind of see their limbs, and the movements until the girl goes limp and is dead. So a roommate of the girl comes downstairs, and Alexia takes a hot poker, not a hot poker, but a poker from the fireplace, and attacks him, and he puts up quite a struggle, but finally she takes a bar stool at the kitchen and puts it in his mouth and forces it in his mouth to where it's choking, and then pushes down with all her force, and it just, you can hear it just kind of probably going right through the back of his neck, and she's sitting on it, and then when she stands up, there's a longer shot, and he's laying there, and it's like there, sitting, resting inside of his face, or what's left of his face, and then she sees this girl, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm calling," and the guys before he dies, he says, "Call the police." And by this time, Alexia has this like it's there's a lot of humor in this movie. I don't know if other people agree. Maybe I just have a diminished sense of humor, but um, she you kind of get this impression, and she mumbles some things, like oh God, here's another one I have to dispatch. And so she follows the woman up the stairs, runs into this the girl's in the bathroom. She knocks, and she's got I think she still has the poker, and then this black guy appears out of nowhere, and then she like puts her head on his shoulder, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And you don't really know. She might be feeling queasy again, but she's obviously, maybe as she did with kissing the fan, luring her in with her feminine wiles, or however you want to put it, banking on the fact that guys are like this. And this guy, sure enough, he's like, "Do you want to rest in my bed?" Um, and then she stabs him from behind with the poker and ends him pretty quick. The girl runs out, and she chases her down the steps, and that's quite a struggle, in which she gets knocked in the back of the head against the wall. Which maybe that's the impact trauma. I don't know. That just now occurred to me because there's a little blood on the wall. Just kind of reminded me of *Malignant*, which I watched the other day. And anyway, she takes the girl out, and then she does go back to the house and burn some clothes, and basically it's in the garage, and there's flammable stuff against the wall, and the flame is really intense, and she's just kind of standing there watching it rise, and then she leaves, and then she's walking upstairs, you see smoke behind her again. I laughed, and she goes to the parents' room and looks in on them. The mom's asleep, and the dad's kind of looking at her, and she's looking at him, and she takes the key out of the door to lock the door from the inside, and then pauses as though she's not sure what she's going to go ahead and do, which is what I expected her to do. And she does. And she shuts the door. The dad's like, "Whoa." She shuts the door, locks it from the outside, and then next thing you know, she's hitchhiking with the clothes on her back. So I assume that their parents' house exploded, and they died. And that kind of gave me the impetus that, that's not the right word, it gave me more ammunition for the theory that this may have been rooted in some sexual abuse by her father against her. And so there's other little clues here, but watch the movie for yourself. But I'm going to give most of it away, but not all of it. So yeah, she's like hitchhiking, and she's trying to kind of, well, this is the deal. So the way I figured it is she's the serial killer. They reported on the news. And then, of course, since then, naturally, now she's killed with her parents, 6 more people. And she probably killed these little kids 10 years earlier. She was 22 then. So, yeah, so this has been going on a while, this kind of sociopathic behavior. And is it endemic to her? Is it brought on by abuse? Is it caused or at least exacerbated by the metal plate in her head? Probably yes to all of those. But to make a long story short, she just realizes that she's now wanted, that there's been a sketch composite of her face, and she sees it when she's out in public, and so she kind of, puts her head down with a hoodie, and then she, this movie has a lot of really intense physical scenes centered around her, not only her, but mainly her, and her acting is excruciating and intense. It is very physical. It's very, you feel every little thing she does. So that even though some of the damage done to her or by her uh, in other movies might not come off as so intense, but the way this is shot, the way it's performed, it's kind of like the scene in Dogtooth where the girl decides to break her tooth out and she just takes this wrench or whatever and just hits it and then doesn't quite get it, hits it again, and it's just like sudden and it's Winston Deuce. That's how this was. There were several scenes that I audibly gasped at. A lot of scenes I laughed at. They weren't necessarily the same scenes, and sometimes they were. Um, Go figure. And there were four other people in the audience, and you know, these were your typical. They seemed kind of hipster gothies, and fan bros, and basically their reaction to the movie was like, it never fails. It never fails to astonish me when I go to see a really intense envelope pushing movie and the audience is like, and I don't know if they just don't feel anything. They just went to see the movie because they think it's requisite because it's supposed to be cool and there's a buzz about it, but they don't really engage with it, or maybe it sails over their heads. But there was one scene where I laughed and I can't remember what it was, and some other people gasped. The scene I saw earlier in the day, a lot of the reactions were mutual between the audience. But I have a good time at movies and when I see them in the theater, and I guess I'm always kind of, I don't want to say dismayed because it really doesn't matter, but I'm always a little surprised when other people just aren't having a good time. And I think, why do they go see these kind of movies? Well, why do they go see movies? What kind of movies would make them gasp? Like Michael Bay's Transformers, or a new Spielberg film, or Fast and Furious 25. What would get that reaction from them? Why are they watching art house movies? It's weird to me. Anyway, so uh, she goes to the bathroom of this public area where there has been displayed not only her face but also the face of the kids, including the Adrian kid, who they said they were trying to advance his looks, but they didn't really do a real good job. He's obviously a bit younger than her, so I guess, and there's pictures of him when he was missing. He's a child. When she killed him, I assume she killed him when she was 22. She's been missing 10 years, and now she's 32. And this is where you start learning more about her through the announcements on the intercom and the news. And she realizes now she's going to be recognized. So, her behavior just gets more and more extreme. And she goes to a restroom and locks herself in after she's purchased some things. I think this is at an airport. And she, yeah. So one thing she's purchased gauze and large amounts of gauze and scissors, and she cuts her hair really short, um, and she binds her breasts, and she looks at it and she notices her tummy's a little bigger, and she's kind of looking in the picture because she was in very trim shape before, and now she's got a little bitty pot belly, and she kind of sucks it in like, hmm. And okay, so that's another important element I forgot from earlier, is that she had actually noticed that when she was at the girl's house before she killed her and all her roommates. And that's when she noticed it, and that's when she got a pregnancy test. I guess they bought it together or whatever. And she's looking at it and it's positive, and she's pissed off. And she takes her hairpin thing, another excruciating scene, and puts it, they don't show it going, but this is what's happening, and her acting's immaculate. I guess pushes it up into her uterus and kind of jabs for a while, and she's in agonizing pain, and she's biting on some towels, and then screaming. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So I guess she's trying to abort it. I'm like, what the hell is this girl going to do next? Woman, sorry. Um, but anyway, flashback forward back to where I was. So yes, so she knows she's pregnant inexplicably, I guess, because you haven't seen anyone have intercourse with her. But that could have happened before the adult part of her story in the movie started, or it could have happened when she was humping the car. Um, yeah. So, did you figure that out before I was going to say it? That's what I thought immediately. I thought, well, it's crazy, but you know. So that's the car fetish thing. Um, so yeah, she's such a trippy character. And we're about to meet another trippy character, the other major character. But suffice to say, she's in this restroom and she's binding her tummy and her breasts to try to look like a boy, I guess. And the illusion's not enough, so she decides to break her nose. And again, she's like whacking it, and she can't quite whack it hard enough to break it, just to hurt it. And then she puts it up against the sink thing, and she kind of like measures it out and does a few false starts, and then wham, and then it's broken, and she looks in the mirror and she's actually happy, and it's really gross. It's so she goes through the rest of this movie with this part of her nose just sticking way out over here where the bone is snapped, and under the skin. And so I guess then she feels confident she's gonna disguise herself as a boy, and she actually has a plan in mind. Because, like I said, at the airport she was at, not only were they showing pictures of her uh, composited from witnesses, but they were showing, Adrian, and showing, not showing so much like where we are would be now, but theorizing on, talking about age progressing him, how he would look. But no one really knows. So it's a little outlandish, but stick with me because I think that's what the whole thing is predicated on. Is this is a very emotional film to me anyway. I didn't start feeling it until about halfway through, and here's where the movie pivots completely. Is she turns herself into the police, but not as Alexia, the serial killer, but as Adrian, the missing boy. Um, and the policeman tells the father, played by our man. What did I say this guy's name was? Damn it! This great actor. Help me out here. Letterboxd. Vincent Lindon. He's incredible in this, and he's like, "Well, we tried to call the mother, and the father's like, there is no mother." Um, and and then they're like, "We're preparing a DNA test." He's like, "I don't need a DNA test. You think I can't recognize my own son?" And so he sees her sitting there, and for a few seconds, you're kind of like, okay, well, he can probably tell this isn't his son. Or is he that deluded? Is he just wanting so badly to have his son back? Or a son? Or anyone? And that stuff does become manifest as we go on these needs and feelings he has, and his psychological flaws and emotional damage. A lot of which I think was caused by her son being killed. So ironically, this character, Alexia, who's now turning herself over to his custody, pretending to be her dead son, Adrian, she caused this sorrow in this man because she's the one who killed dead son Adrian. So it's amazing the depths this thing gets to. So at this point, I was still like, oh, okay, so this is going to go in a weird direction because we've established she's such a hard and kind of sociopathic character. But I also felt sympathy for her, finding herself pregnant, and she was kind of like, in bed at one point, right after she had fucked the car. Yeah, and she had like black, like kind of like oil for her car on her panties, and I thought, well, maybe she really did fuck the car and fucked the piston or shaft or whatever you call it, the stick shift. I don't know. And I thought maybe it stained her, but it soon becomes obvious that it's kind of oozing from her. So, is it oozing from her because of what she's pregnant with, or is it oozing from her because of this titanium steel plate in her head? What's the correlation? So, anyway, bear with me. All will be most will be revealed. The rest can be conjectured, and then that's the beauty of it. Maybe there is no right answer. Um, so she moves in with the guy, and he's the captain of a firefighter team, and they basically live. It looks like they live in the same area as the station, um, and the firefighters are like this odd bunch of white and black young men. They're all pretty strapping and macho, except for one guy who's kind of less macho, and he's kind of a deciding character. I forgot his name, but him and the captain, he really likes the captain. He cares about him, and he's happy to see that he found his son. Alexia becomes Adrienne, and Adrienne, the new Adrienne, never speaks. She doesn't want to give away her voice, and the dad is understanding, sympathetic. He chalks it up to trauma, and it really makes sense because no one knew what happened to Adrienne. So I think the implication is the father believes Adrienne was snatched, probably sexually assaulted, probably had to live this horrible, rough life as a teenager because, he seems very effeminate, has a lot of tattoos, and he thinks, probably, and has a broken nose, and it's probably like, my son, became gay and became a hustler and did what he had to do to survive and is now mute and traumatized, but I love him no matter what. And I gotta say, the more they built up that theme and the way he treats his faux son, I started crying about halfway through the movie with this because it was kind of like I had a dream about my own dad recently. We didn't have an ideal relationship, but he did leave me everything he had when he died and saved me basically. So even though these circumstances are vastly different, I kind of got the feeling that this dad, he loves his son. He doesn't care if his son's fucked up and mute and gay and crazy acting. He doesn't give a damn. He loves him and he's happy to have him back. But we soon realize that the dad is even more fucked up than that. He's shooting some substance into his buttocks regularly. He's got bruises all over them, and he drinks a lot and smokes cigarettes, and then he'll take pills with wine and then shoot himself up in ass. And I don't know if it's heroin or what. I mean, at one point, he's a very muscular guy, especially for his age. And at one point, he shoots up, and you think he's going to go into that heroin bliss, and not quite. He kind of goes a little nuts. He starts working out in the fire station, and can't quite, do the exercises he's trying to do, pull ups on these bars and such. And he's frustrated and cursing. He's just wide open and manic. So I don't know what he was really shooting up. I don't know. And they never really tell you for sure. But obviously, I think, to me, it's like part of the spiral of his life since his son died. And if now it's so ingrained in him, it's a habit, it's an addiction. But so he's not really trying to kick it since the son's gone back. I mean, it's just kind of he's assimilating all this into his life, and I think his happiness over having his son back is really what's now driving him. And a lot of the situations and scenes become awkward because he's almost walking in on her undressing or undressed and seeing that she's a female with breasts, and she has very nice breasts, I'll say that. And though it's kind of fucked up as she gets bigger and more pregnant and more scarred and starts to have like these tears in her skin. Here, the body horror thing comes in. Her breasts have lacerations, and it's like, and she's sometimes totally naked, and you're just like, you've already seen from early in the movie, she has a really beautiful body, thin but very athletic and well developed, and and then just seeing it distort like this. I mean, and even that even includes breaking her nose. Just the whole physical transformation of her going to these extremes to not be caught by the police, but also to hide her gender and her pregnancy. So she's constantly binding herself with this gauze, and he's almost finding out several times that it's a woman, it's not his son. But they keep bonding, and something really kind of magical happens. You start to see it again. She's mute. Uh, you know, she only talks near the very end to him. Reals that she can't talk, but um, so for a long time she's mute, and he like makes her an honorary firefighter and goes with him on simulations. Apparently, the simulations involve real fire, but it's under a controlled scenario. I don't know where or how they hold them. At first, I'm like, simulations are these like a holodeck on Star Trek Next Gen or what, Um, but uh, what starts happening with them is pretty touching, and she does try to run away at one point, and she gets on a bus, and there's all these really misogynistic, you know, dude bro fuckers, which the firemen kind of are like that too, really. These guys are bragging about all their pussy they're getting, and then they start talking shit to her, Alexia, Adrian, thinking it's a gay boy, telling him basically he needs to go fuck the beautiful black woman across from him. And then the bus goes off, and she's not on it. She just walks back home, and uh, our man here is kind of OD'd on his cocktail. He shot himself up twice in the ass, and she sees him helpless, and she takes out her pen, and she's gonna kill him. Uh, and she can't do it. Um, and she's like mad at herself. Ugh. And so then she kind of like hugs him, and then like tries to slap him awake, and she starts talking. He doesn't hear her, but she starts talking in character as Adrian, and she's like, Papa, wake up, Papa. And I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know. It looks like he's dead. And so she just starts hanging around the house looking at pictures of Adrian's mother. And she's in this one particular like sunflower dress when she was pregnant. And she finds the dress and she puts it on, and she's her legs are bare. She's got like a shirt on, but she doesn't have herself all completely bound back, and you know she still has some physical issues happening with the pregnancy thing, and uh, suddenly he calls out to her, the father, the fire chief captain. I don't remember his name, and we'll just call him the captain, Dad. So as he calls out to her, so he's alive, he's fine and dandy, and she like hides in the closet, and pun intended, and puts a pillow in front of herself and has the dress on top of her shirt, and he's like, "What are you doing in there?" And it's like he's so amused that his gay son is dressing in his mom's dress that she wore when she was pregnant with him. It's pretty sweet. I don't know. It's fucked up, but it's sweet. And things continue to go along this line, even to the point where, well, one thing he's done is shaven half her hair, like around the mark where the plate is. I guess he thought that was maybe a scar or damage from years away. But he just stopped short, and so he's still got like short hair on one side and then like buzzed on the other side. And so she, when she thinks he's dead, she takes that opportunity to shave it off all the way. So now she's got kind of the skinhead look, and making herself, I guess, feel or look more masculine. She hopes, I guess, she's looking more masculine to other people. But all the firemen guys think, he's gay. Just the kind of a delicate, effeminate kid. So her ruse is working, but there's one point where several fucked up things start to kind of happen that unravel everything. The fireman guy that the captain was particularly fond of, and vice versa, he's on the fire truck with them at one point, and he's just looking on the internet, and he's, and at this point, Alexia slash Adrian is kind of happy. She's starting to smile and really have fun with the dad, and even with the fireman to an extent. And this cat, he looks up at her as she's smiling, and from that angle, I guess she looks a little more feminine. And he's looking down, and on the internet, he's looking at the news report thing of her face, the wanted thing. And he's put two and two together. He's like Sherlock fucking Holmes. So, uh, he says, "Where did you really come from?" And she just kind of laughs at him. I don't know if she thinks he's joking around or she's just trying to play it off. Maybe she suspects he suspects. And so they have one of these weird. They have these several times in the movie. They have this weird kind of rave thing in the firehouse off hours, and they're playing like this loud kind of rave music, and they're all dancing around. It's just, and the thing is, you're looking at these guys and they're like so macho and ripped, and it's like so homoerotic. But they're like making fun of Adrian for being gay. And it's like, projection much, guys? I don't know, and the captain, they urge him to dance too, and he starts dancing, and he dances with Adrian and hoists her up on his shoulders, and she's starting to look kind of ecstatic, like it really is a rave, even though they're not high. Well, the dad might be high. And you really feel this transcendent feeling. This actress is so nuanced with her expressions. I mean, you really feel like she had this biological father who probably abused her, definitely hated her, and vice versa. And this terrible accident ensued, which, fucked her up in the head even worse. And she takes all this rage out by killing people and children and adults. And now this father, this new father, this faux father, is more of a real father that she never had, and accepts her unconditionally, at least up as far as he knows. He still thinks that it's Adrian, though, there's a level where you start to wonder if he suspects maybe, but he's deluding himself, that it might be, might not be Adrian, but he doesn't care. And that acceptance fills her with this kind of joy, this transcendence, and it's really beautiful. Unfortunately, she's still, in the bathroom, in the bedroom, struggling with her growing belly and having trouble wrapping it and hiding it in her breasts, and still having marks everywhere and like little creases, and picking at them. And at one point, she puts her finger through her stomach a little bit, and it's like black in there, and there's like that black oil, and it looks like there's something metallic under there. So they juggle all this really beautifully. The pacing of this is perfect, and so many things happen, and they're all so intense and engaging. I mean, from the humorous to the wince-inducing, I don't know, to the emotional. But basically, the fireman guy, he goes with them on a simulation, the three of them, and Captain falls down, and hits his head, and he's like, "Are you okay, Captain? Do you know me? Do you know my name? Do you know my name? What's my name? What's your name?" And the captain's like, "Leave me alone," and he's like, "What's her name?" And he says it, points to the son, daughter, and the captain's like, and he gets up, pushes him away. So she goes to the fire truck to watch all this and what they're going to do to finish the simulation. And he takes out of the truck this kind of tank. It looks like a little mini propane tank. And he's like, he hands it to the guy, and he's like, "Take this." And then he kind of like goes out into where the fire is starting to come around, and all of a sudden there's an explosion, and Captain wakes up. His thing is cracked. His visor, his helmet thing, on his hazmat-like suit, and he gets up and he staggers up and he looks into the forest. And I guess I assumed he was looking at the corpse of this guy, and then maybe he deliberately wanted that guy to blow up because the guy had already taken him aside once at one of the rave things and said, "I want to talk about your son." And he's like, "We don't talk about my son." And he's like, "But it's really important." He's like, "We don't talk about my son." And the guy's like, "Okay." So then, like I said, the guy blurts out, her name. And I assumed he like sabotaged the guy and killed him for his daring to question their reality. You don't see the guy again for a while. It turns out he did live, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, but that takes care of that problem. So, finally, after that's happened though, and obviously there's been some thinking about all this on the part of the dad, and he comes into the bathroom, and Alexia doesn't have much time to cover herself, and he kind of sees the stomach sticking out, and he's kind of like, "Oh," and he hugs him, and he says, "I don't care if you're Adrian or not. You'll always be my son." And he hugs him, and she hugs him back, and in pulling away, her towel falls off, and he sees her tits, and then he like grabs the towel and puts it back on her, like, to preserve her modesty. So now he knows, definitely not his son, definitely a woman. Though I think he was already suspecting that, but again, not caring. He wanted this person in his life. He needed this person in his life to fulfill this hole left by Adrian's death. So, so now the cat's more or less out of the bag, and they have another little rave, and they tell Adrian, they cart Adrian around. They're having kind of a mosh pit to this music, and you see the asshole fire, who I thought died, and he's got all these scars all over him. I think he's got his one of his arms in a sling or something. He's all fucked up, but he's there, and he gives her a hateful look. And I'm like, when they hoist her up of the mosh pit, I'm like, oh no, he told them, and they're all gonna like kill him or kill her or rape her. It's gonna be like Boys Don't Cry. Not exactly, but it does have to do with reveals and revelations, and they force her to go up on the top of the fire truck and want her to dance to the music. And now, of course, I assumed now that no, they don't know, but they're just fucking with Adrian because he's gay, and he's like their little play toy. And meanwhile, I think they're all repressed homosexuals. So, and that kind of comes across in this scene because Adrian begins dancing, and dancing kind of like she did as Alexia with the cars. Very erotic, very sensual. Keeps all the fireman clothes on, the whole boyish look, but twerks her ass a little, and it's like they all are looking at her like they're kind of like bamboozled, like they have no clue what's going on, and then they're kind of like disturbed and confused, and then maybe probably aroused, but don't know how to handle it. And then the captain comes in, and she's still up there dancing, and she sees him, and she keeps doing it, the erotic gestures, and it's almost like she wants to turn him on because she loves it. I mean, I'm not saying that it's gotten to that level between them yet. Oops. But it seems that's the direction it's going. This love is, it's deep, and it's coming from the inside, and it's going outward into the physical. Like you fall in love with someone that you're friends with, and first you may not find them attractive physically, sexually, but then once that feeling kind of consumes you, overwhelms you, and you have that connection, then they're the hottest, most beautiful person alive, and you want to make love with them because you want to continue to connect with them physically in addition to the other places you already have. And so, yes, I'm speaking from experience, Dan. And so he walks away and she looks disappointed, like she let down her father slash whatever when she's trying to please him by, I guess, turning him on. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, he knows it's a woman now, so it's like, I guess she figures that barrier's out of the way, or does he still just see her as his son or as his child? Where is this going to go? And so then the worst possible thing happened. Two worst possible things. First thing is the mother arrives. So there is a mother, and her and the dad obviously don't get along. And she looks at Adrian, and he, says nothing. And the mom tries to talk, and the dad's like, no, he's mute. It's perfectly normal. And, then the mom is like, the mom is, I don't know, very circumspect, and I would think so. Maybe she's not as deluded as the father, and she does see that it's obviously not their son. And so then the parents decide to talk amongst themselves, and the dad's like, "You can't take him away from me," and she's like, "I don't want him," and then she's like, telling off the dad, insulting him, basically saying, how could you live in here day in, day out with his toys and his stuff and, the smell of him here without putting all that stuff away? Wouldn't it drive you insane? And she's saying it as though he's not back. So, she's not buying it. And he is disturbed and annoyed by this. And so she goes to the room Adrian is staying in, and she's in there, and she has taken all her clothes off, and she's having problems. She's getting bigger and bigger. Pregnancy is progressing extremely accelerated, super fast. It's hyper speed. It hasn't been 9 months. This is I don't even know if it's been 9 days, maybe a few weeks. This whole span of this movie, it takes place except the beginning, and it's getting bad. She's leaking all the black fluid, and her nipples are starting. She pinches her nipples; they're sore, and it comes out of her nipples, and then she's got that little hole there, and then it's coming out from between her legs, and then there's like this split here, and then there's this metallic thing showing again, and it's getting worse, and she's got all these kind of lashes across her body. I don't know if this is from. I think those are from wearing the bindings to the lashes across her breasts and her waist and buttocks. And the mom comes in on her in this take. She's in a lot of pain. And I'm thinking, is she going to go to the hospital? Is he going to take her to the hospital? And now, he knows. And she's a total cunt. Oh, excuse my language. The mom is to Alexia, and says, it's kind of, really awful considering the pain she's in. But then, Alexia reaches out for her hand. She's in so much pain, and the mom grabs it. Mom's like, "You poor thing." It's like, what kind of mess have you gotten yourself into? And then she's like, I don't care if you're my son. You're not my son. I don't care if he thinks you're my son or not, or if he knows or whatever. But you've got to promise me you've got to stay with him because he needs someone. If not you, someone else. He has this. I forgot how she puts it, but basically what I said earlier. He's got this void that she's filling. So the mom splits, and after her pain and anguish and all this weirdness, she goes to the fire truck. First, I couldn't figure out what was happening. She's in the fire truck, and she's done it again. She's tethered herself to two sides of the back seat, and she's humping the fire truck. So she's having sex with another vehicle. And I personally think it was a combination of things, like trying to deal with the pain through pleasure, but also she's starting to have this attraction to the dad character who now knows she's not his son. And like she's trying to, masturbate herself to get this sexual release that was pent up because, sex was a different animal to her earlier, and now it's something different. It's something involving humanity and affection. It's not, dancing on cars and fucking cars and experimenting with strange girls and, I don't toying with men sexually and then killing them, flirting with them anyway. And I don't know. So now it's like she's got all this healthy buildup of, I guess, passion and tension and emotion, and this is how she knows how to get it out, is by fucking the cars. But that's how she got into this mess. So uh, at this point, I figure things are only going to get worse with her physically, and sure enough, she's very sick. And while she's, um, it's pretty fucked up. Basically, um, she kind of staggers back to the house, and the music gets really incredible, and she's totally naked, and again, and meanwhile, the dad has started to kind of get tired and been drinking and smoking, and he pours some alcohol on his chest. He's got a shirt on, and he has a lighter. And he sets himself on fire, and I guess he wants to die. He's so confused over his feelings. He's very disturbed after seeing her do this dance and everything, and everything that's happened with the mom and all this other shit. And so he catches fire, but he starts putting it out with a blanket. If anybody knows how to do it, it would be a fireman. And she staggers in after he's kind of put the fire out, and she's naked and it's dark, and he's like, what are you doing, what are you doing here? And of course that's freaking her out, her being totally naked, and it's like she's going over another boundary. They've been kind of gradually breaking them down. um, and she crawls into bed with him, and he seems averse at first, and then he's gonna leave, uh, and I don't know. It's fucked up. Basically, she puts her head on his stomach and starts kissing it. And I thought they're gonna have sex, and then she starts kissing his chest, and then she kind of is astride him a bit, and she kisses him on the mouth, and it's passionate but brief, and then he's freaking out too much, and he decides to split, and she's like, "Come back, I need you." She's in a lot of pain, and it's getting worse. And finally, he sees, oh my God, because this black fluid is coming out everywhere, and he's, like, and she knows she's pregnant, and so he goes to her to help her, and one thing he had said to her, uh, one thing she had said to him before they kissed was, she's like, "Je t'aime," and he's like, "Je t'aime aussi," and so she finally spoke. She did speak earlier to him, very briefly, when he was asking to be shot up in his ass by her. And she's like, "Are you sick?" And he's like, "No, I'm just old." And um, again, I'm not really sure what substance that was. So she's now spoken to him twice, and of course, the cat's out of the bag anyway. Um, but when she spoke to him the first time, I don't think he knew for sure it was a female. But I guess, again, he knew, but he didn't want to go there. Um, and yeah, so they said they love each other. And so he goes back to the bed and tries to help her. And she goes into labor, and her stomach is splitting on the sides, and this metal's showing through. And the side of her head is splitting near where the titanium is, and it looks metallic here. And all the black oil is coming out of her. And he's like, "Push." He gets between her legs, and I'm like, "Oh no, is he now gonna fuck her now? What a horrible guy." But no, he tells her to push. He's gonna deliver this baby, and he does. And you hear the baby crying, and he puts it on the bed. You don't see the baby though. And he goes up to her, and she's dying, and he does mouth to mouth, and resuscitation and all this stuff, because they showed earlier they did it for um, some people who were in trouble that they were called to help from the fire station. Incidental scene, but foreshadowing that yes, he knows how to do all this. And so he tries, and it's too late. She's dead. And then he pulls away, and it's kind of like this kind of sticky. It's not the black oil, it's like the sticky kind of thing on his lips from giving her the mouth to mouth. And then he kisses her on the mouth, and he's pretty sad. And then he hears the baby crying again, and he picks up the baby, and he comes up to her, and like kind of the baby is all swaddled, and kind of like I guess showing them each other, even though she's dead and it's barely alive and newly alive. And what is it? You're waiting for this reveal. So he he lays back on the bed, and you know he's on his back, and he's holding the baby, and pulls the swaddling down a little, and you see part of the back of the baby, and it looks kind of like a human baby. And then the camera kind of comes around as he's holding it, and he's basically saying, I'm here, I'm here, and like he's here for this kid, and wow, full circle. And you do see the top part of the baby's spine are these metallic ridges jutting out. They're not huge, but they're very noticeable. And as the camera comes around, you see that one side of the baby's head over here. It's kind of like Cyborg, the superhero Cyborg in Doom Patrol and Teen Titans, in Justice League. It's like the smooth metal, like what's probably inside of her head. And the camera goes on him, and it's just kind of heartbreaking. And then the movie's over, and it's like, wow. And again, nobody had any reaction. I was going to clap, but I realized that would have been considered gauche among this too cool for school crowd that I was with. Well, 4-person crowd besides myself. Yeah, they immediately just walked right out of the theater. You know, I don't know. Maybe it blew their minds. Maybe that's what they deserve for trying to go see this kind of movie and not being prepared for it. It blew my mind too, though, in a really good way. It's much better than I expected it to be. The trailer makes it really hard to figure out what it's about, other than she has a titanium plate in her head. You can't. All the scenes and shots are completely out of context and really don't make any sense. It seems like it could be any kind of movie. Probably not a horror movie exactly, though, but just another weird, crazy French film like Gaspar Noé might put out, but not that intense and graphic. With a lot of music and dancing, and they showed this kind of stuff in the trailer, and it's like there are a few dancing scenes, but that's not the crux of the movie. I mean, of course, yes, she's a dancer, but she only dances twice in the movie. And then the dad dances a couple of times, obviously, like I said. And they dance together once. But that's weird to build the trailer around these kind of quick, colorful images and music. You can tell it's going to be a weird movie, but you can't really tell it's like a horror movie or even a very extreme movie. You can tell it's going to be a very erotic movie and adult and crazy, but not so dark and extreme, much less so emotional. Maybe it's just me. I don't know if this touched anyone else the same way, but that's my review for TITANE. I need to wrap this the fuck up. It's too long and it's getting late here. Other than seeing the movies, I had a kind of annoying theater experience in a lot of ways because the trailers were terrible and they went on forever and ever. They were very loud. So all the timing, I did have enough time between the movies, like I kind of planned it out, but not as much as I thought I would, because the first one ran so long because all these trailers went on for like a half hour. I thought I was going to barely get there in time to see the first movie. It turns out I had tons of extra time. I had all this anxiety that I didn't need. And then the second movie, I went in there early and I ate something and waited. And then next thing you know, there's trailers. And I was like, oh, it's not going to be as bad as the last. But it was. It was almost all exactly the same trailers, but with a couple of other, R-rated film trailers for good measure. Both of them had the Eternals trailer, which don't get me started on that. That's for another time. But So I was annoyed. It wasn't as good a movie experience as when I saw Transformers the movie the other day because that didn't have all this fanfare. I don't know if it's because it's a Fathom Events thing or what, but the AMC propaganda was awful. And if you go see an AMC movie anytime in the near future, I'm warning you, not only is there a lot of AMC propaganda and also a lot of vaccination propaganda. Yes, I've been vaccinated, but it was still extremely heavy handed. Um, but also under propaganda, there's like an AMC celebrating 100 years of AMC and how great it is. And it's hosted by Nicole Kidman, and she looks ridiculous and phony as always. And as always, she's acting. She's very, you're very aware she's acting, and it's, I mean, I'm sure she didn't direct this piece, this, whatever you want to call this ad for AMC, but it was extraordinarily cheesy, even by her standards. It was trash. It was ridiculous. So after suffering through all that twice, I was so happy that TITANE was so incredible and took my mind out of that, commercial propaganda zone and into art that I can, feel and react to that resonates. So with that note, I'm going to leave, and soon I'll be back with more Halloween reviews, and I'll review the other movie I saw today. Keep it a surprise till then. All right. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think of this movie. I'm going to read about it a bit tonight before I go to sleep. Take care. Thanks for everything.